World events. We're referring to the current situation in your home and ours globally as world events, because apparently if you refer to it by its true name or any variation thereof, YouTube will throttle your video. Now, we don't know that 100% for sure. It's been reported widely, but we can't risk it because we're a small channel that nobody watches. So if our videos get demonetized or throttled, we can't do anything about it. Second to that, owing to our personal situations and our distance, because we live about an hour apart, it would be irresponsible for either of us to travel, I think. So we have run out of content. But don't worry, we're going to continue to record things remotely in this snazzy new format, as you can see. I've awkwardly bodged Duncan's Skype window into OBS to facilitate that. So we're not stopping. That's the main thing. We will continue to make content every week, maybe even make a bit more now. We don't have the pressure of having to meet up. It's not going to look as good, but nobody has to die. Duncan, Casey, troubled times, yes, for the film industry. That's today's topic of discussion.
It certainly seems that way, yes. God, everything's getting shunted and postponed. I think, how many was it now recently? I think it's basically there's only going to be 2 releases that are still on the schedule for April in terms of sort of major studio releases. Yeah,
it's a kind of absolute wipeout, really. I mean, one of the bigger ones, obviously, is Black Widow. Black Widow and Panther. Black Widow. We did a dedicated video about James Bond because it seemed as if that was just one big high profile kind of thing. That was who blinked first, so it got its own video. I mean, we're looking at cinema chains here shutting down. Cineworld, Odeon, I know for a fact have shut down. I think there are others as well taking part in that in the States. AMC, Regal and Cinemark are shutting down according to the Los Angeles Times. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today, in among all the other stuff, is that Universal has been the first to blink in this regard, and they're going to be releasing their new releases straight to streaming. Now, well, not straight to streaming, kind of concurrently to streaming. The kind of deal that's been in place with cinemas for the longest time, particularly kind of old studios like Universal, is that the films would be in the cinema exclusively for 90 days before they had any kind of home release or wider thing. And now they've kind of gone against that because they're exhibiting their films for people in the home. So Invisible Man, Trolls World Tour, which you and I were desperate to see. Of course, you know, the first two Troll films, which we loved dearly. We were desperate to see Trolls World Tour, so those are going straight to streaming. Netflix has launched its watch party kind of facility. It's a browser extension for Chrome, which we thought we might capitalise on. Movies have been delayed, so relevant to our little world. Big things happening. Like, I mean, there's big shake up here, unprecedented, really.
The Universal thing, where are they releasing those for streaming? Is it like VOD or is it just...
Yeah, it's like VOD, but I think it's their own... I don't know if they have their own proprietary platform for that. I mean, that's something that I was kind of looking into, because I don't know if there's something called, like, Universal Now or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I know someone in my life who wants to see The Invisible Man, and we were going to go see it in the cinema, but now I guess we go and stream it. Because it's supposed to be quite good. It's supposed to be rather good, Invisible Man.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I mean, it came out, right?
Yeah, it's been out, but now all the cinemas are closing down. So you know,
like right in the middle of its run.
Right in the middle of its run, yeah. I mean, production shut down all over the place. EastEnders, which in this country is a very long-running British soap, which just films constantly. You were on EastEnders multiple times.
Indeed.
Yeah, very famous British soap.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's me, Phil Mitchell, you know.
Pat Butcher, you know, strap the tits on Mrs. Doubtfire. Wonderful.
That was the like trivia, the trivia section. Like little known fact, like Pat Butcher was actually played by Pierce Brosnan.
Got away with that for years.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's I believe is. I mean, they used to be 1 day a week. They went up to 5 days a week quite some years ago, and that's been in constant production. But that's shut down. All kinds of movies in production have shut down as well, which is pretty crazy. But what option do they have? Really? I mean, we haven't. This is absolutely your classic generational health crisis, which we probably haven't seen since Spanish flu. Keeping in mind that cinemas were the only place to watch films then.
Yeah, very true. Very different sort of time now. I mean, in terms of seeing it through the prism of cinema as a medium, I think it's going to open. I mean, as we've seen in other industries, notably the airline industry, but also and hospitality, which I suppose cinema chains kind of fall into. But we're going to see the sort of fissures open up, I think, because it's interesting to see just how many companies and industries were so much on the breadline that this kind of hiccup has actually closed them. I mean, it will be interesting to see who emerges, who had the cash flow and everything to keep going during this time. Is going to be, I mean, I know there's going to be government help, but I mean, it's going to be minimal, I think. And when you look at like things like cinema chains, we've always kind of known and suspected for a long time weren't doing big numbers. They weren't massive going concerns anymore. Thanks to the onslaught of your streaming services and all that. I've long posited the idea that, like, really, that whoever's going to cut the next sort of level of this, the next person who's going to come out on top, or next company that's going to come out on top, is the one that offers an ability to switch between services sort of on the fly. And BT TV have started doing that. So you can there's a service, I can't remember what it's called now, they've started advertising it though, where you can switch on packages on a monthly basis. So you can have like Now TV 1 month, and then you can have Sky packages the next.
Yeah, okay.
So, which makes total sense. So basically, someone needs to act as a go-between to broker a deal between all these services, so that basically you don't have to buy a year's subscription to every single one of them, because it's just getting silly. What with Disney Plus and Canada style plus agreement.
Well, and this is that's why we're having that discussion of does Universal have its own service, because we just don't know. Like, it probably does. Like, or I mean, like, NBC Universe is a thing. So would it go on the NBC one? Is that a thing?
Well, don't Disney own Universal?
I don't think so. I don't think Universal are a Disney thing. I don't believe so.
I'm going to my laptop and checking.
There's I'm
pretty sure they do, because like when we were doing, I know I'm off screen. Apologies.
The cable knits cardigan of
is talking to you. When we were doing Maleficent, like things like Maleficent, all that, they did the Cinderella thing, all the Snow White and the Huntsman, that was all Universal, but it was for Disney property, because Disney bought Universal. So I'm sure they are owned by Disney, but I'm going to check, because that's the kind of, this is a bulletin, and we make sure that everything is up to the date and into the wind or whatever.
Yeah, very good. No, very good. Whilst you're looking at that, because there was something I fished out earlier, article from The Guardian here, 19th of March 2020, so that is today. At least 170,000 lose jobs as film industry grinds to a halt due to world events. Around 120,000 people are out of work in Hollywood, while in the UK it's estimated 50,000 freelancers will lose their jobs. Now, it's quite hard for a freelancer to lose their job, because technically you don't have a job to begin with. But that's kind of what's happened to me, at least, because I do lots of events and stuff, and that's all been cancelled. And I think those who and a lot of film industry stuff is on an ad hoc basis. Quite a lot of people don't have contracted long-term or permanent roles. You go from job to job, for studio to studio, do the next thing, be that in making props or art design or what have you. So it's kind of hard to describe it as losing a job. It is that, really. What have you discovered?
Nothing. Sorry, no, I was just agreeing with you. It's not very conclusive, this, but anyway, let's just say that maybe they do.
I don't think they do, because then all of the Universal Monsters stuff would be under Disney.
Yeah, it's weird, but like all of because they were making lots of live action versions of the Disney things.
What Universal were? It's probably a co-production thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it must be. Anyway, sorry about that tangent.
That's all right. I created some bonus material. The Guardian, going back to the Guardian article, the film and TV industry worldwide has experienced a near total cessation of activity, with thousands of largely freelance crew laid off at short notice with little or no financial compensation. Scores of productions ranging from studio shoots such as the Avatar sequels, oh no, and Fantastic Beasts 3, to independent films such as Paul Schrader's The Card Counter have been halted. Now, I know Paul Schrader, who's making his new film, The Card Counter, came out this week and kind of went, fuck it, I'll just carry on. It's like, yeah, Paul, you're in the age bracket that will die if they get it, and it's not just you. You've got a whole crew full of people. I know it's a smaller movie, but that's fucking irresponsible, mate, and a bit dumb.
Yeah, and who's going to watch it?
Well,
You know?
yeah.
Depending on when the release was for, but yeah, I know it's it sucks. I mean, this and again, there's another thing that it exposes is the tentative side of what we do and why, you know, quite often, certainly from an acting point of view, it's usually the already independently wealthy or those of us who've been canny enough to kind of have side hustles that you can fall on. I mean, I'm very fortunate because I do copywriting. That's something I do kind of. I've long ago was my now wife, then girlfriend, kicked my ass into touch and said, go and do something like other than sit around and wait for acting work. And so I did, and I, you know, thanks to her, to my brother-in-law and other people who helped me put me in touch with copywriting agencies and stuff. So I ended up doing work, and now that's something I can do from home. Luckily, there's still a demand for it because, you know, people still have websites and still can, you know, access all that. So I'm very, very fortunate to have that as a side hustle, and that's luck as well, because that was just the thing I fell into, and luckily it is a thing that people still need. But there's so many people out there, man, and I'm sure you're feeling the pinch as well, where it's like once the gate just shuts and there's nothing, like, what do you do? I mean,
well, I've got some numbers from BEC2, which is the Broadcasting, Entertainment, Communications and Theatre Union, who I did actually... The irony of I've been looking for a union since I got into this line of work, and I was going to join BEC2, but now I can't afford any outgoings because of this. So, you know, but BEC2 are citing... they estimate 50,000 industry freelancers will have lost their jobs as a result of the world events. A survey conducted by the union suggested that 71% of freelancers, about 35,000 people in the industry, will struggle to survive financially as a result of the shutdown. Now, yeah, I think for my part, all my work disappeared last week. All of it just went, and I've got one awards show that's pushed back till September as a tentative, but we don't know if that's still going to happen. I'm still in post-production on a few things. Work from home. You know, I work from home most of the time anyway when I'm not on shoots, but everything I would go out and shoot at has now gone. So I'm waiting on a lump of money. As far as I'm aware, that is the final amount of money I am going to get until the end of the fucking world events, Mr. Black. So my kind of side hustles also seem to have shut down a bit, because I tend to do sort of office work and stuff on the side, and they've all been sent home. We have been told that the food delivery sector is now considered essential staff. Now, I went out into town today because I've been shooting kind of B-roll of what's going on in the streets, just because I just want to kind of keep a record of it. And today's thing was going around and shooting signs on the front of businesses, because that's what I do with my spare time. And lots of kind of co-video production related stuff.
Well said.
And one of the things is that restaurants quite a lot are only doing takeaway and delivery, no sitting. And I saw that quite a lot. So I've had my Deliveroo sort of deactivated. I might have to fucking reactivate my Deliveroo and become food delivery guy again, which was fucking pittance. The government haven't really taken any kind of hard action on what's going to happen to self-employed people yet, because it's a day-by-day situation. I don't know what time do you know what time the daily briefings are from Number 10? It's around now, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say it is around now. Yeah.
So we're recording this on Thursday, the 19th at 3:30. They tend to come mid-afternoon. I mean, a lot of people are saying that London's going to be locked down in the style of places across Italy and Spain, possibly as of tomorrow. But all that is rumour. You know, there's none of that's come from the top. You know, I've heard it endlessly from fucking someone's cousin on Facebook, but it's not. You know, it hasn't really come from the top.
There's been rumours like the Duke of Edinburgh has died, and they're not reporting it.
And Tom Hanks is a paedophile. Did you hear all that stuff?
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh man, no, yeah, hold on. So Tom Hanks, Justin Trudeau, Morgan Freeman, all the basically loads of people that have been reported to have been involved somehow in coronaviruses, actually, because they're all paedophiles, and it's a massive stick. Fuck it. I'll edit it. If they take it down, I'll fucking edit the words out. Jesus Christ. Are all secretly paedophiles, and this is a cover up. And there's a tandem theory that they're all paedophiles, and the government engineered the world events in a lab in order to cover up. Because I love that. Like,
where do you find this?
I love
shit?
like we can secretly control the world as a shadow government and engineer world events, but we can't arrest a bunch of paedophiles from Hollywood. we have all this control, but that's the one thing we can't. So that's no useful. But when your fucking auntie's on Facebook saying you should drink 1.5 liters of apple cider vinegar and then dip your balls in bleach and that will cure it. It's just like, it's a world of misinformation.
A member of my family, I won't say which one, but sent a sort of email around us all talking about how, and it was all kind of, my friend's sister's doctor's brother's dog said that, and it was full of that stuff of like, keep drinking water so that you swallow the virus and then your stomach acid will kill it. And all this shit. It's like, right. Like, that's all.
God.
Just quickly, let's phone up China and say that, guess what, everyone? Like, the answer is to just swallow.
You guys never swallow. Oh,
that's it. They just spit everywhere.
They're just so much gobbing. So much gobbing. Let's have a quick look at the. So I did find a New York Times article circling back around to the Universal Pictures situation.
Yes.
When I was having a quick look around earlier. Universal Pictures said on Monday it would no longer give theatres an exclusive period of roughly 90 days to play new movies, a break with a long-standing Hollywood practice, blah, 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 blah. We hope and believe that people will still go to movies in the theatre where available, but we understand that people in different areas of the world, this is increasingly less possible. So that's from Jeff Shell, CEO of NBC Universal. At least some competing studios are likely to follow. Executives across Hollywood say the move by Universal as an opening to experiment with pay-per-view model that would allow consumers to game immediately on your email, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is... Starting Friday, 3 Universal movies that have already been released in theatres will be available in homes, $20 for a 48-hour rental period, through online stores such as iTunes, Prime Video, and on cable systems such as Comcast. So Universal's owned by Comcast. So the films are The Hunt, The Invisible Man, Emma, and Trolls 3 World Tour. So, I think... I
don't want to see any of those.
Well, Invisible Man is supposed to be quite good. They reckon?
Yeah,
but I'm not going to bludge anyone to death for it. I'm saving that for when I want the last tin of pedigree chum that's left in the country or whatever. I think I tell you what, I do have a kind of perspective on both these things, on both the absence of cinema goers and the introduction of home streaming as immediacy.
Mm-hmm.
Cinemas, and I love the cinema, and I love group exhibition. I'm a really big believer in how the people you see a film with and the context in which you see a film shape your experience of that film. I think that's hugely important. They're increasingly a kind of dinosaur thing, and they're pricing themselves out of the market because Hollywood squeezes them for ticket costs, so they end up charging loads on the back end with all the concessions and stuff. And cinema's been at risk of becoming irrelevant, and I think the studios know that, and I think they probably want it to go this way, because I think cinemas to them are just kind of a financial black hole, and they would rather be charging you directly, because $20 for a 48-hour rental, that's fucking rinsing. But $20 for a family of 5 to watch it at home, or what, 40, 50, and that's before you've even touched snacks, and the bastards won't even let you take your own sweets in, like, you know what I mean? That is better for the consumer at that end. And I wonder if they've been going to go that way. I think they look at Netflix, for example, with quite green eyes. I think that's something they view enviously. Netflix have had to play it the other way because they've been, they have to put on one showing of The Irishman in a cinema somewhere so it can get Academy, they have to play those games. But from the consumer end, we get to watch these things immediately. There's the fragmentation of streaming services, which is a ball ache, but we get that immediacy. It kills the social aspect, which I think is a real shame. But younger people, man, we've raised them on a diet of screens and apps and online interaction, so that they're less bothered about being in a room with each other. And then off the back of world events, Mr. Black, like, that's going to put people, even when this is all done and dusted, when the dust settles on this, people aren't going to want to fucking hang out with each other anymore.
Well, yeah, I think either they are or they'll be so desperate to because they've been shut in. I don't know, but I think you're right. I think the other thing that it raises about the way in which we watch watch films. I mean, I think obviously the premium. You're sort of talking about, I suppose, a sort of 20 to 30 quid premium to see something, and it's obviously scalable because, as you say, firstly there's snacks, but then there's also like the more people who go to the cinema, the more it costs. Whereas if you just rent it at home, whoever you can pack your living room with, although you shouldn't do that right now because of world events, they can therefore see it for the same price. But one thing that, and you're right, I think what a lot of people now are conditioned to kind of how they experience film in particular is through a medium where usually you can pause it, you can get up, you can multi-screen, so many of these, and I believe it's like a lot of the original content that the likes of Netflix and Prime are putting out there, especially in terms of feature films, has been designed around people, like the way that the screenplays and stuff are written are designed around, I don't know what the equation is, but it's like every few minutes or seconds they have to do something that grabs your attention again, because people will just be looking at their phones instead of looking at the screen. Whereas, so in the cinema, if you go see something in the cinema, though, it's still that medium of like you watch it end to end. There's no pausing it. There's no fast forwarding anything. There's no getting up and going for a shit and going back. You know what I mean? It's like it's all. Well, you can do that, but you'll miss it. And so it's still you're a captive audience and you have to, which is why there's so many sodding adverts when you go. But it's that as well, and I think that's kind of being lost here. But I do understand it because the cinema model's broken, unfortunately, and rather than try and adjust it with the times, they've just doubled down on excluding things and trying to tighten their grasp on that kind of, not monopoly, but like you say, that agreement between studios and stuff, and everyone focusing on the opening box office weekend and all that crap. I just wish in a way that would go. I mean, I don't know, because I do think that is then also going to significantly cut the feet out from under studios financially. And it's one thing to say, well, who cares? The studios, they're greedy buggers or whatever. But I still want these kind of films to get made, and they just won't get made on that scale anymore, and they won't be made for cinema, which I think is a shame. Because even though stuff that's shot for Netflix release and VOD release is cinematic in how it's shot, it's still not shot with that in mind, if you know what I mean. It's not really shot.
Well, yeah, the 35mm format was designed to be projected onto a screen, as was 70mm, and now we don't tend to use those, but we work in 35mm sensors and stuff, and we even the modern cameras are designed to sort of cinema cameras to simulate that kind of thing and that level of detail. So unless you've got the biggest of big TVs, in terms of the detail that's being served to you, it's not the same. The fact is that in most cases you see a film in the cinema once, then own it on Blu-ray and watch it time and time again. Circling back to your sort of original point versus how they craft this content for this new market, I think it's interesting that, and I don't think this was done by design, but Netflix just went to Martin Scorsese and said, make whatever you want, because they know Martin Scorsese is Martin Scorsese, and whatever he makes is going to be a huge hit, right? Mm-hmm. Tarantino went to Sony because obviously he parted with the Weinsteins because bad stuff. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, first movie for him at Sony, and of course Sony just went do it if you like. He got complete free reign. I believe Tarantino kind of shopped around. They let him do whatever he wants because Tarantino's going to be a hit. So in Scorsese's case, and I am slowly coming back to a point that you'd raised, him making a 3.5-hour film, that's not going to trouble Netflix. Studios quite a lot with exhibitions in cinema balked at long films for most creators because it would mean fewer screenings in a day. And right. Fox in the 2000s were notorious for cutting films down for that exact reason, because they wanted to fit in more screenings. You can say what you like about Fox now because it doesn't exist anymore. So, them releasing a 3.5-hour film or 3-hour 40 film to Netflix from Martin Scorsese, it doesn't matter that it's too long because people will get up and have a shit or order a pizza or what I mean, like,
yeah, absolutely,
I'm certain that that's the case. So they've looked at that and they have no reason to balk at that, because it doesn't matter that you can't screen it 8 times in a day because millions of individuals watching it once. So it's not the same model. I say creatively that's interesting, because I think in theory right now there would be more creative freedom for creators because there's less of a risk on the part of the streaming service, but nothing like that lasts forever. That's
the thing. It's like finding that happy medium between, because the model of having to release in a certain time of the year in a certain schedule. I don't know, what do we say? Schedule. Having, like you say, having to, like, all these sort of cynical things of like, oh, chop them down and we get more people in, and they could probably extend the ad breaks and all that kind of stuff. You know, all that kind of guff. I wanted to go away. Arguably we've seen like a real glut of films that have fallen prey to that kind of stuff recently, like DCEU stuff is the prime example, where it's kind of like Justice League, that ended up that way just so that some Warner Brothers execs could keep their bonuses, and that was all predicated upon them releasing on a certain time, and it was all cynically manipulated to be, and it's like you get this sort of filmmaking by committee and all that kind of rubbish that that we all see. It's so transparent in what we're watching, and we wish it would go away, but yeah, it always comes back. And I think I'd like the removal of the incentives that create those kind of films, but at the same time, and I don't know that the sort of Netflix model is how you cultivate films that aren't that, if you know what I mean. Like, so I don't know the incentive, the financial incentives that need to be in place in order for someone to make a Batman movie, for example, or a Superman movie that is, what we want, which is, sort of character driven and good, and and has all the element, and is what's the word, sort of creatively rich and interesting and all that kind of thing, and I don't know. It just seems like the Netflix model is, as you say, it is almost exactly the other way around, which is that Netflix want big names, because the thing that's happened to them is because everyone is creating their own streaming services, and Disney Plus being a big one, they've stripped out of Netflix all of the big sort of Hollywood films now. So like all the Marvel a lot of the Marvel films used to be on Netflix. They've whipped those away because they're going on to them, and pretty much anything Disney owns is getting taken away. Like all the licenses aren't getting renewed. So Netflix and Prime are all desperate to get their own original content together so that no one can take it away from them. And so so that's why they're kind of going to people like Scorsese, I suppose, and saying, do whatever you want. Here's 50 billion trillion pounds because we need it. But I don't know that that's the sort of answer either. Maybe it is. I don't know. Well, it's interesting though, and I sorry.
So, well, this is this medium has existed now for a few years. Particularly, I think Netflix, 2012 for UK launch of Netflix. I know they had their disc in the post service, which seems so fucking laughable now, but it's like Love Film as well. But Netflix as a streaming thing has existed here, I think, for about 8 years. I can't remember exactly. I was a very early adopter of Netflix. It's surprising that other services have taken so long to get on that particular bandwagon, and it certainly seems to be the future. And these unfortunate global events are going to be very interesting to them and their numbers, because you're looking, and it's not like a war or an accident. It's global. It's this insane test of the global market. This is the first time in a generation this has happened, which means the first time the connected world, the internet world, has been subjected to something this severe on such a scale. The entire planet is behind closed doors right now, wanking and fucking watching The Irishman, So their numbers are going to be through the roof. Not at the same time, no. Their numbers are going to be through the roof. Because people, and they've, like I said, Netflix launched their watch party extension this week. I think lots of companies are kind of offering things to kind of make this a bit sweeter. So, I mean, Universal testing this, and if other studios follow suit, them testing this model is going to be really telling to them, and it might define how we consume films in the future. I think it was going that way anyway, but I think this is really going to be the kind of flashpoint, and I think this is petrol being poured onto that. If it goes their way, I mean, because the other thing is that it's not the norm, and things will go back to normal. This isn't how things are going to be forever, but that this is the situation right now. And how are they going to deal with that?
It really depends. I mean, I think a lot rests on the next few days and weeks in terms of how locked down we become before we kind of get over the peak of it. That's going to be interesting. I think because it's how long that lasts, isn't it? I mean, you're right in that these are extraordinary circumstances, and once they're gone, things will revert. But it's how long this lasts for, and what that then does. Yeah, and like you said, and if that then creates a glut in the other areas, because what's effectively happened is that these world events have handed to the likes of Netflix, all the home service providers, it's handed them a massive coup in terms of all of this and content consumption. So I don't know. Yeah, it's. I think people. I think if these services are going to start offering people way above and beyond what they're used to, they will expect that going forward, and maybe it'll turn the sort of spotlight on the big studios and say, hey, why haven't you been doing this all along? You know.
Well, maybe this is a coup for them. Maybe this is a coup. Who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would like a world in which, I could go to the cinema, because like if I want to see, excuse me, if I want to see No Time to Die in the cinema, which I do, I can do that, and I can have that collective experience, and I can see it on the big screen with all the sound, and it's what it should be. But then I want to be able to go home, and if I really liked it, I can download it for home, like there and then.
Well, yeah, I know there's been there was discussion at some point of a kind of hybridized model, which I kind of like the sound of, because again, I do think that the consumption of cinema in a cinema is really important, and I think it's really vital, and I do think context is such a huge part of how we enjoy these things, having seen the same film over and over again in certain situations, etc., etc. One thing that a lot of people use, for example, the Cineworld Unlimited card, and a lot of cinemas offer that now, which is all you can eat monthly flat fee for the cinema. Now, something I've heard described before is kind of a hybridized model of that, where you have your unlimited card, and then you go to see a movie. Say you choose to go see No Time to Die on your unlimited card, and then they give you a download code, and you can go and stream it for 24 hours after you leave the cinema, or something like that. Or the card gets you both, and you choose which one to do. You would go to the bricks and mortar place, and then they make their money on concessions, as they always have done. Speaking as a former cinema peon. So is there something in that? I mean, because it's the idea of killing the bricks and mortar cinema, because it is an event to people. People still want to go on dates. People still want to take their kids. It's become increasingly unwieldy. I mean, I worked in a chain of cinemas in 2004. And they were hands down the worst company I've ever worked for, and I've worked for some shitbags. But it's because it's an industry that's so squeezed, and it just all of that gets taken out on the frontline staff, and even up to the middle management. They're all treated like shit as well, because there was such a squeeze on them. And what people have said, it's got better. It's got so much better in the last 15 years. But right now, if you go into a cinema, you can buy what approaches actual food. Most of them have proper bars. You can buy alcoholic drinks to go in. There's more variety of stuff, where it used to be pretty much, when I worked in the cinema, is that you could buy a bag of Revels, varying sizes of bags of popcorn, varying sizes of drinks, some pick and mix, and all of it is disgustingly expensive. Now, it's still disgustingly expensive, but there's more of it. There's more variety. But it used to be so. When I worked in one, it was so limited. It was like nachos, hot dogs, popcorn, and they were all ridiculously inflated because they were the lowest overhead foods.
Where you had to sit in someone's lap on a chair made of farts.
A chair made of farts. Well, you sort of release the bum smell sometimes when you. And I will say this: I don't know I don't work in the cinema anymore, but the experience of going to the cinema has improved in terms of what they offer, but it's all still far too expensive. But what I've enjoyed is that the cinema has been forced to sing for its supper a little bit in the last few years, because I just resent being treated like cattle. I mean, we recently got. The Picture House chain was bought by Cineworld, but I've always enjoyed Picture House. They are quite expensive because it's a cinema. We have the Light Cinema in Cambridge, which is really lovely. I recently went to a lovely small cinema in Wisbech that I've forgotten the name of. Wisbech, little bumfuck Cambridgeshire town. They've got a beautiful one-screen cinema. I went and saw 1917 there. It was a lovely experience. Beautiful room. So the room exists for that kind of exhibition. And it'd be a real shame to see it die, because I do think that's all part of the experience,
Yeah, I mean, we have a showcase which is they're supposed to be building an Odeon here, I think, as well. But yeah, I mean that because I remember when in fact it was the second date I ever went on with my now lovely wife, and we went to see Annabelle, which I'm gonna get a load of crap for, but actually,
the films we see on dates, come on.
Yeah.
I want to see that George Michael heart transplant film at Christmas. You know, the Emma Thompson one, Last Christmas.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I didn't realise. Anyway,
it's all George Michael music.
Oh, okay. So when we went to see that cinema was awful. It was like it had no floor lighting, so like it was basically lights were up or lights were down, and if you went in like once the ads had started, it was pitch black and you couldn't see where the hell you were. The seats were like crammed in. You like they were old and rickety and farty and made of that kind of wool that like just heats you up in all sorts of horrible ways that it's just uncomfortable. But now they've completely gutted it and put it in, and you've got like the big recliners, you know, the electric recliners, and big loads of space between the seats and everything, so people can walk past without clouting you and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it's not like being on an airline where everyone half the row has to get up to let the middle person out for a pee or whatever. You know, so it's yeah, you're right. I mean, in that sense, they've been made to kind of sing for their supper. But I worry that it was probably at the behest of debt, in that I'm assuming a lot of them had to, you know, it wasn't a case of they could just dip into their massive cash flow and pay for all that. I bet you a lot of them had to borrow the money to upgrade the cinemas, you know, with the idea that it would be paid back over time. And then it's like, yeah, but when stuff like this happens, you know, and you haven't got a light at the end of the tunnel potentially, what do you do? You know, and I don't want to see them go away, but I've always thought the model needs to change. Maybe the idea of, yeah, you can buy a code online that either lets you go see it in the cinema, or what if you could buy a code online that, you know, you just had access to that film for 24 hours, whether it was online or in the cinema.
Exactly. However, on your phone, in your house, at the cinema, right?
I mean, it's piracy, isn't it? That's what has stopped a lot of this.
Well, you know, there was a time when they would have, just the whole concept of Netflix would have been considered far too risky. You know what I mean? Because of piracy. And now in the online world, the reason we get simultaneous releases is because when someone does release a film 6 months early in like America, it's like, what the fuck were you thinking? It's gonna be everywhere the day you release it. You know, like, because these scum fucks are gonna be all over it straight away. So, you know, perhaps we'll see. You know, for London, for example, the Genesis Cinema, the Screen on the Green, the Prince Charles, you got the Electric in Birmingham. You know, the smaller boutique cinemas that put on kind of cult films and stuff, but still run the new shit. Perhaps we'll see more of that, kind of more of a boutique situation, whereas you go there because you want to go there and it's more of a specialised thing. Because I think, you know, cinemas only just learned in the last 5 to 10 years to stop treating us like cattle. Because oddly enough, people resent that when you charge them a load of money. So, like, the View in Cambridge was all stripped out. There are way fewer seats, but every single seat is this amazing recliner that turns into like a full karma bed. So you can bring a pillow and go all the way back. It's brilliant. And when my leg was mashed up, a couple of things we did is, like, bless my mum, like, gave us a lift to the cinema. My brothers, like, helped me up the stairs so we could go see Bumblebee and At the Spider-Verse, because those are great films. Sort of children's films are quite good to watch when you're on morphine. But it did mean the only reason I could go to the movies was because I couldn't sit in a normal seat. My leg had to be extended because it wouldn't bend, so I could go into the full karma seat and enjoy the film. And then you think about that in relation to all people with all kinds of accessibility and disabilities and how they can access a film. Whereas, because it used to be the model that, like, there was space for you to park wheelchairs at the front and that's it. Otherwise, get in the fucking seat with the rest of the cattle. And now there's a bit more of a drive to make it an interesting, you know, or at least an accessible and a comfortable situation.
Yeah, and I think what I hope is that as well, like, that whatever this brings about, it's like that people learn to tell stories again. Because I'm getting, you know, I think the experience, like you say, of going in should be better. You should be treated like a customer rather than, as you say, cattle. And I think we need to perhaps I don't think we do. I think we do understand this generally, but I do think it would be good if we could properly relearn what it means to be told a story. Like, I mean, the idea, I don't know if it's just because I was a kid and in awe of everything, but like going to the cinema used to be this thing where you were like, it's basically this big flat wall is going to tell you a story, and that's all, and you're going to sit there and be told the story. And it's like, yeah, some of the stories had big flashy bang stuff and it was amazing and awesome, but nevertheless, that's essentially what you're doing, is staring at a wall for 3 hours or 2.5 hours. And so and that captive thing of just being told a story is something we've really lost at home, because it's kind of like, you can be distracted by your phone, or you can be the odds of just sitting there and paying attention and being focused for that long are so remote now.
Well, I did kind of want to touch on this briefly, and it does kind of, going back to the origins of cinema as a means of exhibition. You and I are at the kind of top end of what's considered a millennial. It's kind of the mid to late 30s, so and we are the age group, because the younger than millennial didn't necessarily experience this, but we were patrons of the old world, the pre-internet world, rotary phones and fucking phone boxes and the old style of cinema. Because when we were kids, it was still the case that there would be a cartoon first, and an old lady would come out with a tray of ice creams halfway through the film, and it was in those old Art Deco cinemas, because cinemas were originally designed to be palatial, and the idea was that you would. That's where the term B movie comes from, as I've discussed before, because you had your A film with Cary Grant, you had your shitbox B picture, and then you had a reel of cartoons. So, you would have 3 or 4 hours worth of films. There'd be live music. There'd be, all kinds of entertainments. And the idea was you were out for the night, so you would put on your best. You go out to the cinema, and that's why they were these gilded kind of gold Art Deco-y palaces. Those kind of, and they were called picture palaces, and it's something that they're slowly disappearing or being turned into Witherspoons or whatever, as is the case with the one in Cambridge. And it was a case that it was this huge big thing because it was the only place to go. And when the Multiplex first appeared in Cambridge, we were all like, oh yeah, it's going to be 8 screens. And what we didn't realise was you were being sold a kind of generic shoebox to go sit in. And all of that was gone, because the Cambridge ABC, as you probably well remember, had balconies and all that kind of insane detail in it and stuff. Yeah. And it was the same staff that had worked there for years in old waistcoats and stuff. And it was kind of a bit dinosaur at the time, but it was still how those things were being done, and it's not the case anymore. And that's diminished more and more. And I think cinemas have only just started to realise that you need to give more than just a screen, particularly in the age of digital projection, when it's just that's just a fucking project. I know they're massive, fucking huge projectors the size of a horse that sound like a Harrier jump jet taking off, but it's a digital projector.
Yeah, I think also, you're absolutely right. I think also the films need to give us more as well, and I think what they've defined as more is things like 3D or more bigger expenditure. But it's that doesn't mean it's going to be good. The idea that I keep ragging on Justice League, sorry, but it's just what's in my head right now. But it's that. What was that? $300 million, and you're like, that didn't make it a better film. Logan and Deadpool wiped the floor with it, and they're 40, 50.
Well, the profit margins are so squeezed at that level. You know what I mean? I think the Avengers Endgame, whatever. That's the only time you can really justify it, because you'd have to shit the bed to fuck up a hit like that. And call it The Rise of Skywalker, but to squander that goodwill, and I think that is kind of sarcasm hiding a genuine point in the Rise of Skywalker or the new Star Wars films are a really good study in how to squander goodwill, whereas even the DC films didn't have the level of goodwill that Star Wars has or had. So you invest these insanely high levels of money. And of course you're not going to turn a bloody profit. And then, like you say, something with canny marketing or just goodwill behind it, such as Deadpool or Wolverine, Logan, then come and clean up because they were a fraction of the cost. And the same, Blumhouse Invisible Man. Universal was throwing crazy money at the Dark Universe, and then they ended up just farming it off to Blumhouse because they couldn't get their fucking house in order. And look, they've made a great little hit that cost not a great load of money, but got good notices, and people went and watched it. Fucking cow surprise.
That's it, man. Yeah, I mean, as soon as it's been jettisoned from this connected universe thing, that seems to be what has, put it into a much stronger position. I mean, I just think that they need to get back to telling good stories and stop focusing on the kind of the sort of Disney World, theme ride or whatever, the roller coaster ride of it all, because I think as well, because of the way things have moved online, you always get these little behind the scenes features. All the sort of supplementary DVD material seems to get released as part of the marketing campaign now, and it's but that's not. I don't want to go into a film having seen how everything was filmed before I've even seen the bloody film. Mission Impossible. The way they do the Mission Impossible ones is actually quite canny because they do show bits of stunt work and stuff, but it's not in context, and they really, really don't I think they skirt the line, but they generally don't ruin the film. Though because I suppose as well with that is like, yeah, all right, we know Tom Cruise is going to hang off a helicopter by his nuts. Whenever you see it, that he did it for real. So it's kind of like almost like there isn't a curtain to peel behind anyway, because it's it's actually happening. So so there's that, but. I think they need to just get back to kind of. I wish they could get back to just sort of telling stories properly and just not the spectacle as the tail is wagging the dog as far as all that's concerned now. And I think I don't know if current world events are going to be the shake-up that needs. I don't think so. But it would be nice if people were coaxed into the cinemas for the right reasons and not strong-armed into them by wanting to see the latest thing, because I think as well, like, and it comes down to this stuff of like stars and having to put stars in movies and stuff like that as well. Is that it's this thing of like, you want to see the pretty people, don't you? Look at the pretty people, look at them. You know them from it's not even them from Instagram. It's these are famous people. These are faces. You know this face. Put the face in cinema. Go see. Give us money for face. And it's like, but. That's not. I don't think that should be a marketing plan. Arguably, though, that is shifting. I mean, things like Knives Out, which I haven't seen it, but which from the sounds of it, would usually be a kind of art house film anyway. It seems to have been kind of put together that way, and you've got these interesting performances from actors who you wouldn't otherwise necessarily get. It's that, and that's been a raging success, and so hopefully that tide was turning anyway. So I suppose, I mean. Maybe that is happening.
I've talked for years and years about how I feel like we've been due another Hollywood crash. Just basically not purely out of cynicism, but just out of the patterns that emerge. Maybe this is it. And, it probably more of a whimper than a bang. Who's to say? Perhaps it forces into more interesting projects. I mean, the Marvel fucking juggernaut is not stopping anytime soon, and that's what's sat atop this part. It's been interesting to watch the sort of the entropy of the Star Wars cycle of films. Again, squandered goodwill, whereas Marvel's still a juggernaut. DC's back to making money because they've revised their approach, let's say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, who knows?
Terminator is another one of those where it's just like they cannot stop. It's like
it can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with.
Yeah. Well, when there literally is no excuse when you have every example that came before you of how not to do it. It's like, but you've just been given so many examples of how this doesn't work. Like, don't do that again.
Stop it! Stop it!
Yeah, I know. So tapping them on the knuckles with a wooden spoon. It's just like, but stop it! But they won't, and it's So I don't know. I mean, who knows? But I do think there's an accelerative element to the current situation. I'm not sure how it's. I mean, no one knows how it's going to shake down, but I hope it shakes I hope it shakes the tree in the right way, and the right things fall out of it, and not all the spiders like in the start of Arachnophobia.
That's where I'd have gone as well. Yeah, that's where I'd have gone.
Julian Sands looking pretty neutral as he tends to about the whole situation.
Well, I think that's probably the spiders from Arachnophobia is a good place to put a button on that. I think we've gone on longer than perhaps was intended. But yeah, well, there you go. So yeah, we're going to be broadcasting like this remotely for the foreseeable, because meeting up's going to be difficult and probably ill-advised, frankly. I will be. I don't know. We're going to talk about when this is going to get released, but I will be streaming Doom Eternal on release day, which is tomorrow, Friday the 20th. I'll also be streaming Resident Evil 3 the day that comes out as well. So we'll keep up with that. Duncan and I are going to talk about doing a proper live stream, a Verde movie-related live stream, hopefully in the next week or so, using this method. For that is how we must conduct ourselves these days. Yeah, you're in quite Duncan can't see me because of technical stuff, but I'm in my sort of grotty bedroom, and he's sat with a nice plant and some framed images.
I've got lots of oxygen.
Lots off the plants. I've had my work. I've been working from home for like 3 or 4 years, and now suddenly I'm co-sharing with my wife Ivan. So I've got someone. So he's downstairs at the moment. So I can't. He's doing like actual work. So I can't be downstairs doing that shit because he's got like real stuff to do.
Yeah, my wife is upstairs currently doing exactly that as well, and having bearing on current events, which is weird. But there we are.
There you go. All right, well, that's that for now. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with something or other soon. Hope you enjoyed this. Slightly different format. Like I say, we're not going anywhere. Times are tough, but, look after yourselves, keep your hands washed, stay inside, do what you're told. And we'll see you next time for whatever we do next. Okay, thanks, goodbye.
Bye.
Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Valverde shop.